My great-grandfather's family tradition put my 13-year-old brother in the hospital with a broken neck, so I gathered evidence and vanished on my 18th birthday. A year later, my cousin told me the younger boys were starting to refuse, too. In my family, all the boys had to follow one rule: mark your cousin with an honor scar or lose your privileges for the week. You see, every Saturday, all my male cousins between the ages of 10 and 18 would gather in the underground basement of my great-grandfather's barn. 2 boys would enter the wooden fighting platform. Only the one who left his mark on his opponent got to keep his privileges for the next week. Meals with the family, access to electronics, participation in social activities. The losers watched from the sidelines, isolated and hungry. They called it building brotherhood through sacrifice. My great-grandfather started this tradition after returning from the Korean War. I watched soft American boys die crying for their mothers. He'd tell us, his glass eye scanning our faces, "No descendant of mine will be weak." My uncles enforced the rules with pride. Uncle Jacob kept a photo album of his fight victories, pages of his cousins' scarred faces from the 1970s. So when I turned 10, I spent my birthday standing in the fighting basement for the first time, surrounded by cousins nursing old wounds. I tried to tell myself it wouldn't be that bad, that I could just force myself to zone out and pretend it wasn't happening. Boy, was I wrong. Turns out it wasn't just leaving a mark. You fought until skin broke and the honor scar was visible to all. No medical help until the winner was finished enjoying their privileges. Winners ate at the family table while losers sat on metal folding chairs against the wall, watching. Brothers fought brothers. Fathers placed bets. First fight's always special. Uncle William announced, pushing me toward the platform. My opponent, my cousin Isaac, also 10, also terrified. The men formed a wall around us, chanting, "Scars bring brotherhood," over and over. Isaac and I circled each other, neither of us wanting to throw the first punch. "Mark him," my father screamed. So I did. I hit him until his eyebrow split and blood trickled down his face. That night, I ate pot roast and mashed potatoes while Isaac sat against the wall with an empty plate and a bandage pressed to his face. The months that followed broke something in all of us. My 13-year-old brother Elliot suffered a neck injury fighting our cousin Noah. The doctors called it a sports accident. But I knew better. I watched as he lay in the hospital bed, temporarily paralyzed, fear in his eyes when our great-grandfather visited. Sebastian, once the sweetest kid, learned to fight dirty, gouging eyes and twisting joints until skin tore. "Got to keep my privileges," he'd say afterward, washing blood from his knuckles. By my 15th fight, I'd only won 8 times. Not enough to avoid the hollow feeling of isolation, but enough to know the sick satisfaction of watching others go without. I hated who I was becoming. And our community was so insular that over half of the teachers at my school were somehow connected to us. My great-grandfather had donated the computer lab. My uncle coached the football team. So they made sure no questions got asked about our injuries or the way some of us would come to school starving on Mondays. I knew if I didn't find an answer soon, my life would be over. But I wanted the problem to go away by itself, and one day, it seemed like it might. We were working on our final project in digital effects class when the teacher showed us how to create realistic-looking wounds using silicone and makeup. That was my light bulb moment. I pocketed some supplies every day to test out my idea. By the time Saturday came around, I had prepared a fake honor scar before entering the fighting platform. When my cousin Oliver grabbed me in a headlock, I activated the hidden blood packet and silicone tear I'd applied to my forehead. "Mark confirmed," Uncle William shouted. Oliver wins. I lost my privileges, and for the first time, I wasn't mad about it. Instead, I focused on perfecting my technique and stealing more supplies. I taught my younger cousins the method during secret meetings behind the school. We developed a system, choreographed moves that looked brutal but caused no damage. A fake stumble here, a hidden blood packet there. For 3 beautiful months, we outsmarted our fathers. We rotated wins based on who needed privileges most. My little brother was smiling again. We were actors, not gladiators. Everything was going smoothly until my great-grandfather turned to my cousin's unmarked face after a supposedly brutal fight. "Where are the bruises?" he asked. "How did they heal so fast?" The room went silent, and I pretended to find the peas on my plate extremely fascinating. We thought he'd forget about it, but he didn't. And the next Saturday, everything changed. Strip searches, metal detectors. Uncle stationed as referees inside the fighting circle. When they found the fake silicone wounds taped inside Noah's waistband, my great-grandfather made an example of him. He called it the honor scar ceremony. In front of the entire family, he heated a custom-made branding tool, a small metal rod with our family crest, until it glowed red. Noah's screams echoed through the barn as the metal seared his skin, leaving a permanent mark on his shoulder. "This is what real brotherhood costs," my great-grandfather said, his glass eye reflecting the barn's harsh lights. "No more deceptions. You're next." My father promised me that night. "Fight like a man or I'll show you what real sacrifice means." I didn't say a word before pulling out my phone. I've been recording these fights for 8 months. Every beating, every branding, it's all uploaded to an encrypted website that CPS and the police already have access to. Every word of what I said was a lie, but it didn't matter. All that mattered was that they stopped with the violence once and for all. "We're done bleeding for you," Isaac announced. Oliver was already on a call. "Police, we need help at 1847 Oakwood Drive. Child abuse in progress." The basement erupted into chaos. Great-grandfather's hands trembled as he reached for Oliver's phone, but my cousin yanked it away, backing toward the stairs. The distant wail of sirens made everyone freeze. "You're bluffing, boy," great-grandfather said. His glass eye fixed on me while his good eye darted between the small basement windows. His hands shook as he gestured for everyone to stay calm, but I saw the fear creeping into his weathered face. Father lunged toward me, but Isaac and Oliver stepped between us. Isaac still had dried blood under his fingernails from our fake fight earlier. "This ends tonight, Uncle," he said, voice steady despite everything. I forced myself to maintain the lie, even as my voice cracked. "Check your phones at midnight. Everything goes live. 8 months of evidence." My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my chin up, meeting great-grandfather's stare. A small gasp came from the corner. Oliver had found our 8-year-old cousin Tobias huddled behind the equipment rack, holding his dad's phone up, recording everything. The red light blinked like an accusation. Uncle Jacob snatched the phone from Tobias's tiny hands, his thick fingers fumbling with the screen as he deleted the video. But Tobias whispered something that made Jacob's face drain of color. "I already sent it to Mom." The sirens grew louder, then suddenly veered away toward another street. Oliver's panicked call had given the wrong address. The room exhaled collectively, but their relief was too visible, too guilty. "Family meeting now inside the house," great-grandfather commanded, his authority reasserting itself. He pointed at Sebastian. "Check the streets. Make sure they're really gone. Nobody leaves until we settle this." We filed into the main house like prisoners. The mothers emerged from the kitchen, confusion shifting to horror as they took in the blood on their sons' clothes. They'd known about the fights, pretended not to see, but the starvation element was news to some of them. My mother's face crumpled when she saw my bruised cheek clearly for the first time under the bright kitchen lights. "I thought it was just rough housing," she said, but her voice broke on the lie she'd been telling herself for years. Great-grandfather stood at the head of the dining table, the same table where winners ate while losers watched. "Anyone who walks out that door tonight is dead to this family. No money, no help, nothing." 3 mothers were already gathering their children, coats half on, car keys jingling. My Aunt Rebecca held her twin boys close, both sporting fresh bruises from tonight's interrupted fight. Uncle William moved to block the front door, his bulk filling the frame. "Nobody's going anywhere until we know what evidence actually exists. This could ruin all of us." During the standoff, Isaac caught my eye and showed me his phone screen. He'd been recording audio for the past hour. The battery indicator showed 2%. My stomach dropped. Our only real evidence was dying in his hand. Then the lights went out. Sebastian had reached the breaker box. In the sudden darkness, furniture crashed and adults shouted. Someone's elbow caught me in the ribs as bodies collided in the confusion. The bathroom window. Oliver hissed in my ear. 5 of us scrambled through the small window while our fathers cursed and stumbled in the dark. We hit the ground running, splitting up without discussion. The younger boys headed for my friend Ethan's house 3 blocks over. Oliver, Isaac, and I ran toward the 24-hour diner on Main Street. Marcus's house was closer, so we tried there first. His mother answered the door in her robe, face pinched with worry. Behind her, I could see Marcus's father's silhouette in the hallway. "Your great-grandfather already called," she said, not meeting our eyes. "Get away from here now." The door slammed in our faces. My phone buzzed constantly. Texts flooded in, threats from uncles, pleas from mothers asking if we were safe, demands from fathers wanting our location. Each message made my hands shake harder. At the diner, we barely ordered when the manager approached our booth. "Your great-grandfather called," he said. "Said you boys are runaways. I need to call the police." The security camera's red light blinked above us like Tobias's phone had. We left our untouched food and ran again. Desperate, I called Mrs. Daniels, my digital effects teacher. She answered on the 5th ring, voice thick with sleep. When I explained, she agreed to meet us at the school. Something in her tone seemed off, but I was too desperate to question it. She was waiting in the parking lot when we arrived, but she wasn't alone. Principal Jenkins stood beside her, arms crossed. "Your family's worried sick," Mrs. Daniel said, not meeting my eyes. She'd called them first. Of course she had. Half the school staff was connected to us somehow. The computer lab didn't pay for itself. We bolted through the gymnasium, but Elliot twisted his ankle jumping the chain link fence. His cry of pain echoed across the empty basketball court. Now we had to move slower, supporting him between us. Dawn came with nowhere safe to go. My bank card got declined at 3 different ATMs. Great-grandfather had already made his calls. Closed ranks overnight. Isaac's phone finally died, taking our only recording with it. The local morning news played on a TV in a shop window. "Police are searching for several runaway teens from a respected local family," the anchor said. I recognized her. She was my great-grandfather's doctor's daughter. "Maybe if we apologize," Oliver suggested, exhaustion making him sway on his feet. Noah's little brother, Caleb, had joined us during the night. He pulled up his shirt, showing fresh bruises across his ribs. This is what happened after you left. Dad gave me a lesson about family loyalty. I made a decision. I'll go to the police alone. You guys find somewhere to hide. The police station smelled like burnt coffee and disappointment. I barely started explaining when I saw Uncle Jacob through the glass partition, filing a missing persons report at the next desk. The officer behind the glass partition glanced between Uncle Jacob and me, her expression shifting from boredom to confusion. She held up a finger, signaling me to wait, then buzzed me through to a small interview room that reeked of stale cigarettes and cleaning solution. 20 minutes passed before Detective Walsh entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee and a notepad. He set 1 cup in front of me, then settled into the metal chair across the table. His wedding ring clinked against the table as he opened his notepad. Your uncle says you've been having some troubles at home. He began, voice neutral. Want to tell me your side? I wrapped my hands around the warm cup, gathering courage. The words tumbled out. The basement, the fights, the scars, the starvation. Detective Walsh's pen moved across the page, but his expression grew increasingly skeptical as I spoke. When I finished, he set down his pen and leaned back. So, you're telling me your great-grandfather makes you boys, what, box? Like a boxing club? Not boxing, I corrected, frustration building, fighting until someone's skin breaks. Kids lose privileges if they lose. They go hungry. He rubbed his temple, then called in his partner, Officer Ramirez, whose nameplate caught the fluorescent light. The moment Ramirez heard my story, his face hardened into something I recognized too well. Listen, kid, Ramirez said, crossing his arms. These old military families have different ways. My own grandfather was strict too. It's not abuse, it's discipline. You can't just call it abuse because you don't like it. My protests fell on deaf ears. Within an hour, they released me to Uncle Jacob's custody. Great-grandfather chaired the local Veterans Association and had donated to the police benevolent fund for decades, so favors were effortless. The ride home stretched endlessly. Uncle Jacob's knuckles white on the steering wheel as he made promises about great-grandfather's mercy if I just recanted. We passed Isaac's house. His family's car was gone, driveway empty. Back home, great-grandfather had transformed into the concerned patriarch. He sat in his leather chair, surrounded by my aunts and uncles, playing the worried elder to perfection. Boys fight, he told the room, shaking his head sadly. It's natural. This one has imagination problems. Too much time with those computer people. The next morning, a social worker arrived, a tired-looking woman named Miss Bennett, who interviewed me with my entire family present. Great-grandfather sat beside me, his hand heavy on my shoulder while my parents flanked me on the other side. Every question she asked got filtered through the weight of their presence. Has anyone ever hurt you? She asked, pen poised over her clipboard. Great-grandfather's fingers tightened imperceptibly on my shoulder. My mother's foot tapped against mine under the table. Once, twice a warning. No, I heard myself say. Just normal family stuff. Ms. Bennett left with promises to follow up, but we all knew she wouldn't. Budget cut. CPS closed 200 files that month. Ours was another statistic. The system was overwhelmed, and we looked like a close-knit family dealing with a rebellious teenager. The Korean War veteran great-grandfather with his charitable donations and community standing. The successful uncles with their business connections. The well-dressed cousins with their rehearsed smiles. That night, I lay awake planning. The photo album, Uncle Jacob's trophy collection, still existed somewhere. While the house slept, I crept to great-grandfather's study and lifted his car keys from the hook by the door. My hands shook like his had in the basement, trembling with the weight of what I was about to do. His study smelled of pipe tobacco and old leather. I searched methodically, checking drawers, shelves, the closet. Finally, behind a row of accounting ledgers, I found it. The album's leather cover was worn smooth from handling. I opened it eagerly, ready to photograph the evidence with an old digital camera I'd found. But the pages showed only normal family photos. Birthday parties, graduations, holiday dinners. Every violent image had been carefully replaced, as if decades of brutality had never existed. Looking for something. My mother stood in the doorway, her robe tied tight around her thin frame. In the moonlight, I could see how much weight she'd lost recently, her cheekbones sharp under papery skin. Mom, I need those photos, the real ones. She closed the door behind her, moving to sit on the ottoman near me. I know about the hunger, she said quietly. I've known all along, but what choice do I have? Leave with nothing. Your father lost his job 3 months ago. Your great-grandfather pays our mortgage, your sister's college tuition, everything. The weight of her words settled over me like a shroud, so we just keep letting them hurt us. You play along until you're 18, she said, not meeting my eyes. Then you leave. That's what survivors do. Saturday approached with the inevitability of a funeral. Great-grandfather announced a special exhibition match for my return, promising the family would see me properly educated. The other escaped cousins had trickled back home throughout the week, each with similar stories. No money, nowhere to go. Parents who chose security over their children's safety. Oliver returned with his arm in a sling, claiming a skateboarding accident. Isaac came back silent, his recording device mysteriously missing. Even brave little Tobias was back, moving carefully to avoid aggravating his ribs. Friday night, great-grandfather visited my room. He sat on my desk chair, looking older than I'd ever seen him, but no less dangerous. "Your father tried this at your age," he said conversationally. "Thought he could change things. Now look, he needs me for everything." Through my doorway, I could see my father hovering in the hall, shoulders slumped in defeat. "I'm offering you a deal," great-grandfather continued. "Fight once more properly. Show the family you understand your place. Then you can quit. I'll even pay for college." His face darkened. "But this rebellion ends tomorrow. Or watch what happens to Oliver tomorrow and it will be your fault." Saturday arrived with storm clouds gathering overhead. They locked me in my room during fight preparations, but I could hear everything through the floor. The scrape of feet on concrete, the men's voices placing bets, the nervous laughter of boys trying to seem brave. Then Oliver's screams started. Different from the usual sounds of combat, these were pure agony. I threw myself against the door, ramming my shoulder into it until the handle broke. Racing downstairs and out to the barn, I found blood pooling under the basement door. Inside was chaos. Oliver lay unconscious on the concrete, blood flowing from a head wound. The adults stood frozen, genuinely shocked. Great-grandfather had let the fight go too far, using Oliver to make his point. My mother finally snapped. "Enough!" she screamed, pushing past Uncle William. "Call 911 now. This ends tonight." The room split instantly. Some wives rushed to Oliver's side, while others tried to silence my mother. Aunt Rebecca was already dialing, tears streaming down her face. The ambulance arrived in minutes, paramedics loading Oliver onto a gurney. Great-grandfather told them about a skateboarding accident, his voice steady and convincing. But the EMT, a young woman with keen eyes, noted the inconsistencies in the injury pattern. She made notes on her tablet, exchanging glances with her partner. 40 minutes later, after the sirens and the frantic ride to the hospital, I cornered a nurse named Sarah and told her everything. She listened carefully, documenting every word, but her expression grew sympathetic rather than hopeful. "Without the victim's cooperation, it's just hearsay," she explained gently. "If Vincent confirms your great-grandfather's story," he did. When Oliver woke, his parents hovering nearby, he looked directly at the doctor and said he'd fallen while skateboarding. But he squeezed my hand when no one was looking. An apology in his grip, Sarah showed me something that made my blood run cold. The hospital's computer system had records of cousin after cousin coming in over the years. Broken noses, cracked ribs, concussions, all explained away individually, but together they painted a clear pattern. "I see what this is," Sarah said quietly. "But I need a family member over 18 to make an official report. Someone was standing." In the hospital waiting room, my mother wavered. "Maybe now," she began, but my father cut her off with a look, reminding her of our sister's future, their dependence on great-grandfather's money. I returned home to find my belongings piled on the front porch. Great-grandfather stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "You're no longer welcome in this house," he announced. "But legally, I can't kick out a minor. You'll sleep in the barn." The barn basement still reeked of blood and fear. The wooden fighting platform remained, stained darker in places. I made a bed from old horse blankets in the corner, trying not to think about all the violence these walls had witnessed. While cleaning, I found a tooth wedge between two floorboards. Monday morning, the school counselor called me in. Mrs. Thorne sat behind her desk, hands folded, concern painted across her face. "Your great-grandfather called," she said. "He's worried about your mental health. These accusations you've been making, mandatory therapy sessions started that week." Dr. Harper's office was expensively furnished, all leather and dark wood. He listened to my story with professional interest, making notes that I knew would paint me as delusional. "Your great-grandfather is paying for these sessions," he revealed during our third meeting. "He wants what's best for you. Sometimes trauma can make us misremember events, create false narratives." I realized then what was happening. Every word I spoke was being documented as evidence of my instability. Great-grandfather was building a case that I was mentally ill, ensuring no one would believe me. The next Saturday, I tried to record the fights from my hiding spot in the barn rafters. Sebastian caught me, crushing my phone under his boot while the other cousins watched. None of them helped. They'd learned the price of defiance. Without a phone, I started handwriting everything in a journal, documenting dates, injuries, participants. I hid it in my locker at school, thinking it was safe. But the janitor found it during routine cleaning and, following protocol, turned it into the principal. Principal Blackwood called a family meeting about the disturbing fantasies in my journal. Great-grandfather sat in the office, shaking his head sadly as the principal expressed concern about my violent imagination and false memories. Even Ethan's parents grew concerned when great-grandfather sent them Dr. Harper's preliminary assessment. "Maybe you do need help," Ethan's mother suggested gently when I tried to stay at their house. These delusions seemed serious. Desperate, I went to the local newspaper. The editor, Mr. Collins, listened politely as I laid out my story. He took notes, asked questions, but I could see the skepticism in his eyes. "This is a serious accusation," he said finally. would need proof, corroboration. Without that, it's just hearsay and, frankly, accusing a respected community elder of something this heinous lay. I returned home to find great-grandfather had been busy. The few remaining fight trophies were gone, leaving empty spaces on shelves and walls. The family was erasing its violent history in real time, removing any trace of evidence. Isaac found me that night, sitting alone in the barn basement. He looked exhausted, defeated. I never had recordings, he admitted. I lied to support your bluff. I thought it would work. Thought they'd stop. I'm sorry. The truth of our situation crystallized. Then great-grandfather's goal wasn't just about fighting. It was about control. Complete dominion until boys turned 18 and left voluntarily. Too broken to ever challenge the family hierarchy again. I had to survive 2 more years. I started documenting everything in hidden locations, using library computers to write accounts, storing notes in a locker at the bus station. Every piece of evidence carefully hidden where family couldn't reach. To maintain my cover and avoid worse punishment, I was forced to attend fights as an observer. I sat on an overturned bucket in the corner, watching cousins bloody each other while I took mental notes. The younger boys had started shunning me, great-grandfather's propaganda taking root in fresh minds. One small victory came when I convinced 2 mothers to schedule their sons' activities during fight nights. Piano lessons and soccer practice became shields, but great-grandfather noticed the pattern within weeks and began scheduling fights randomly. Sunday mornings, Wednesday evenings, whenever it suited him. My father finally spoke to me privately one evening, catching me alone in the barn. He looked older than his years, worn down by decades of submission. "I'm saving money," he whispered, glancing nervously at the door. "When you turn 18, I'll help you leave. Just survive until then." But surviving meant watching 10-year-olds enter the fighting platform. It meant seeing boys I'd tried to protect learn to embrace violence. Some cousins now practiced fighting voluntarily, fully indoctrinated into the system. My carefully hidden documentation was discovered when my aunt cleaned the library during a volunteer shift. She destroyed everything to protect the family. She later told me her own son was approaching fight age, and she couldn't risk the tradition ending. Alliances shifted constantly as younger boys reached 10. Some embraced the tradition, seeing it as a path to great-grandfather's approval. Others approached me secretly, begging for help I couldn't give. Sebastian shocked everyone when he broke. The toughest fighter in our generation, he pulled me aside one night, exhaustion written across his scarred face. "I'm tired of hurting cousins," he admitted, "but I'm in too deep to quit now." Together, we created a new evidence cache, using Sebastian's inside knowledge to document everything. We hid it in an abandoned silo near the railroad tracks, a place where I sometimes slept to avoid the barn's oppressive atmosphere. 3 mothers instituted family dinners on fight nights, giving their boys excuses to miss. Great-grandfather retaliated by moving fights to Sunday mornings, adapting his tradition to maintain control. The younger cousin's transformation hurt most. Boys who once played together now practiced combat moves voluntarily, believing great-grandfather's rhetoric about strength and brotherhood. The indoctrination was complete for many of them. Then came a breakthrough. Tobias, the 8-year-old who'd filmed that first night, had kept recording secretly. He showed me clear video of great-grandfather himself demonstrating the honor scar technique on No during a demonstration, blood spattering as he showed the older boys proper technique. But the video included me in the frame, watching without intervening. My complicity was apparent, even if forced. My mother found my evidence cache while following me one evening. She confronted me in the abandoned silo, tears streaming down her gaunt face. "You'll destroy us all for your principles," she demanded. "I've been skipping meals to save money. Your sisters need their education and you want to burn it all down." I made a decision then. Survival over justice. I would wait until 18 to act, gathering evidence for the future rather than the present. The next fight night, great-grandfather forced me to referee a match between 2 10-year-olds, fresh-faced boys who'd never fought before. I stood on the platform, counting drops of blood on wood, fully complicit in the system I'd tried to destroy. Great-grandfather smiled from his chair, knowing he'd won this round. Oliver had recovered but changed. The head injury left him with periodic headaches, but something else had shifted too. He pulled me aside one night, whispering urgently, "I'm recording everything now, really recording for when we're older, when we can actually do something." A network formed quietly, cousins documenting in secret, planning for a future reckoning. The resistance had gone underground, more careful, but not defeated. As my 18th birthday approached, great-grandfather made an announcement that sent ice through my veins. "Our prodigal son will have one final lesson," he declared at dinner. "On his birthday, he fights. Then he can leave with my blessing or stay with my respect." The implications were clear. One last humiliation, one final breaking, and then I'd be free to leave if I could still walk. The cousins whispered about who my opponent would be. Some thought Sebastian, despite our recent alliance. Others suspected great-grandfather would import someone from another branch of the family, someone without our shared history. But I knew better. I'd seen how great-grandfather operated, how he twisted loyalty into weapons. It would be Isaac. My first opponent would be my last, the circle closing with poetic cruelty. And Isaac, now fully indoctrinated, would fight to truly hurt me. The boy who'd once stood beside me against our fathers had become great-grandfather's perfect soldier. The evidence we'd gathered sat in various hiding spots around town. Digital files on library computers, physical documents in bus station lockers, videos on old phones hidden in abandoned buildings. A scattered archive of violence waiting for the right moment. But that moment felt impossibly far away as I sat in the barn basement listening to the latest fight through the walls. The wet sound of impact. The cheers of men reliving their own brutal youths. The silence of mothers who'd chosen security over their son's safety. 2 more months until my birthday. 2 more months of watching, documenting, surviving. 2 more months of being complicit in the very system I'd tried to destroy. The wooden fighting platform waited, patient and hungry, ready for one last feeding. Sunday morning arrived with great-grandfather's new schedule. I watched from the barn doorway as mothers hurried their sons past, claiming urgent church obligations. 3 families managed to avoid the morning fight, but great-grandfather's eyes tracked each absence with cold calculation. Sebastian cornered me behind the equipment shed afterward. His knuckles were split from demonstrating holds on the younger boys. "Your birthday's in 6 weeks," he said, checking over his shoulder. "Isaac has been training extra. Great-grandfather's been coaching him personally." The following week, great-grandfather instituted surprise inspections. He'd appear at piano lessons, soccer practices, even school events, ensuring his grandsons weren't hiding behind manufactured excuses. Mrs. Chen's piano recital got canceled when great-grandfather showed up, demanding her students return for family obligations. I spent nights at the abandoned silo adding to our evidence cache. Sebastian brought photos of medical records he'd stolen from his mother's filing cabinet, years of emergency room visits, all carefully documented. We wrapped everything in plastic, hiding it beneath rotting floorboards. 2 cousins approached me separately that week. 12-year-old Marcus, whose fight debut was approaching, begged for the fake wound technique. I had to explain why it wouldn't work anymore, watching hope drain from his face. 8-year-old Carlos just wanted to know if the hunger would stop hurting eventually. I lied and said yes. Great-grandfather announced a new rule at the next fight. Winners would now enjoy their privileges in front of the entire extended family, not just their opponents. He wanted the mothers to see their starving sons, to understand the price of defiance. My Aunt Maria lasted 10 minutes before breaking down, shoving her own plate toward her defeated son. Great-grandfather banned her from the next 3 family meals. Oliver's headaches worsened during a particularly brutal fight between 2 14-year-olds. He collapsed in the barn, clutching his skull. The family doctor, great-grandfather's golf buddy, prescribed pain medication and suggested less stress. Nobody mentioned the obvious cause. I discovered great-grandfather had been visiting my school counselor weekly, providing updates on my mental state. Mrs. Thorne now looked at me with pity rather than concern, fully convinced I was delusional. My teachers received copies of Dr. Harper's reports, painting me as a troubled teen with violent fantasies. Sebastian's breaking point came 3 weeks before my birthday. Forced to fight his younger brother, he refused to deliver the final blow that would leave the honor scar. Both boys lost their privileges. That night, Sebastian packed a bag and disappeared. His parents filed a missing person report, but I knew he'd made it to his girlfriend's family in Oregon. One less ally, but I was glad he'd escaped. The younger cousin's transformation accelerated. They formed practice groups, meeting after school to perfect their techniques. 10-year-old Diego boasted about the moves great-grandfather taught him privately. The tradition was evolving, becoming self-sustaining, even without the older generation's enforcement. These boys would continue the violence. My mother's weight loss became impossible to ignore. She'd given her portions to my sister so often that her clothes hung loose on her frame. When I confronted her, she simply said, "2 more weeks, then you're free and things will get easier." But we both knew great-grandfather would never let things get easier. Tobias's secret recordings multiplied. The 8-year-old had become our most valuable asset, his age making him invisible to the adults. He showed me footage of great-grandfather instructing the older boys on psychological warfare. How to break an opponent's spirit before the fight even began. But every video included other cousins' faces, implicating them in the system. Great-grandfather scheduled a family reunion for the week before my birthday. Cousins from other states would attend, including some who'd aged out of the fighting years ago. The real purpose was clear. Witnesses for my final humiliation. He wanted every branch of the family to see me broken. I tried one last time with the authorities. A different police station, a different detective. Detective Morrison, a woman with kind eyes who listened to my entire story. She took notes, asked follow-up questions, even seemed to believe me. Then she made a call to check my background and discovered Dr. Harper's reports. The interview ended with pamphlets for mental health resources. Vincent developed a new strategy. During fights, he'd position himself to accidentally interfere when things went too far. A stumbled step here, a knocked over water bottle there. small disruptions that prevented serious injuries. Great-grandfather noticed but couldn't prove intentionality. 3 days before my birthday, Isaac began his final preparations. I watched him in the barn, practicing combinations on the heavy bag great-grandfather had installed. His technique was flawless, brutal. The scared 10-year-old I'd first fought had been replaced by a true believer. He caught me watching once and simply nodded, like an executioner acknowledging his condemned. My father's savings plan hit a snag. Great-grandfather, suspicious of everyone now, had tightened control over the family finances. Bank statements arrived at his house first. Any unusual withdrawals got questioned. My father managed to hide $300 in cash, nowhere near enough for escape. The family reunion arrived with cousins I hadn't seen in years. Men in their 20s and 30s bearing old scars from their fighting days. They shared stories of their glory years, comparing techniques, laughing about the hunger. Not one of them spoke against the tradition. They'd been broken and rebuilt in great-grandfather's image. Great-grandfather made a spectacle of announcing my birthday fight in front of 40 relatives. He declared it would be held at sunset, when warriors prove themselves. Isaac stood beside him, already wearing his fighting clothes. The message was clear. This wasn't just about tradition anymore. It was about crushing rebellion completely. That night, I met with Oliver and the few cousins still secretly resisting. We had evidence, but no way to use it without destroying our family's financial stability. Tobias's videos, Sebastian's photos, my documentation, all useless against great-grandfather's economic stranglehold. We were trapped between justice and survival. My 18th birthday dawned gray and humid. Extended family filled the house, their excitement palpable. Uncles who'd moved away returned to witness the spectacle. Cousins filmed everything on their phones, creating their own documentation of tradition's continuation. The barn basement had been decorated with banners reading "Istih Taro Gh Siki Ife" and "B Awu Bon Dis." Someone had reinforced the wooden fighting platform, making it wider to accommodate the expected violence. Folding chairs lined the walls for the audience. This wasn't just a fight, it was a ceremony. Isaac warmed up in the corner, his focus absolute. Great-grandfather had given him new fighting gloves, lighter ones that would cut easier. Every detail had been planned to ensure maximum damage. Uncle William tested the basement door, making sure it would lock properly. No escapes this time. I made one last check of our evidence cache at the abandoned silo. Everything remained hidden, waiting for someday. Maybe when the younger cousins grew up, when great-grandfather's grip loosened with age, or maybe it would rot there forever, a monument to failed resistance. The extended family gathered as sunset approached. Mothers held their younger children close, whispering explanations about family tradition. The men formed their usual circle, but larger now, 3 rows deep. Great-grandfather sat in a special chair, elevated to see over the crowd. His glass eye caught the overhead light as he smiled. "Tonight we remind everyone what happens to those who challenge family," great-grandfather announced. His voice carried absolute authority. "Isaac has trained hard. He understands honor. He will teach a necessary lesson." They locked the basement door from the inside. No one would leave until blood marked the platform. I stood on the wooden stage, feeling the weight of 40 relatives' expectations. Isaac entered from the opposite side, muscles coiled, ready to destroy what remained of our childhood friendship. The fight began without ceremony. Isaac attacked immediately, combinations great-grandfather had drilled into him for weeks. I dodged, blocked, refused to engage. The crowd grew restless. Someone shouted for blood. Others demanded action. Isaac's frustration built with each missed strike. He'd prepared for war but found only evasion. His attacks grew wilder, more desperate. Great-grandfather's training couldn't account for an opponent who wouldn't fight back. The careful choreography collapsed into chaos. Then I saw my opening. As Isaac lunged forward with a particularly vicious strike, I stepped aside and grabbed his arm, using his own momentum to send him crashing into the corner post of the fighting platform. The impact shook the entire structure. The crowd fell silent, confused by my technique. This wasn't how our fights were supposed to go. "Fight back properly!" Great-grandfather shouted, his face reddening. But I had a different plan. Each time Isaac attacked, I redirected his force toward the platform itself. Wood creaked ominously. A support beam splintered. "What are you doing?" Isaac hissed as we grappled. "Ending this," I whispered back. "Not just for us, for all of them." With one final maneuver, I directed Isaac's full weight against the platform's weakest point. The crack was deafening. Wood splintered and gave way beneath us. We tumbled to the concrete floor as the fighting platform, the physical foundation of great-grandfather's tradition, partially collapsed around us. In the chaos that followed, I stood and faced the stunned family. "I'm 18 today," I announced, my voice steady despite everything. "And I'm done." I pulled a flash drive from my pocket, one Tobias had secretly given me that morning. "This contains everything: the fights, the starvation, the medical records, great-grandfather's own demonstrations. It's backed up in multiple locations." Great-grandfather started to speak, but I cut him off. "I'm not threatening to release it. Not yet. I'm leaving today, and I'm taking this evidence with me. But I'm also leaving something behind." I turned to face the younger cousins, huddled together at the edge of the room. "A choice. for all of you. This tradition dies when great-grandfather dies, or it dies today. Your decision. The silence stretched, heavy with decades of violence. Then Tobias stepped forward. I don't want to fight when I'm 10, he said, his voice small but clear. One by one, other young boys joined him. Carlos, Marcus, even Diego, who'd been so proud of his fighting skills. We don't want to fight either. The mothers moved next, forming a protective circle around their sons. Great-grandfather stood, his authority visibly crumbling for the first time. This is weakness, he spat. This is over. My father interrupted, stepping forward. My son is right. It ends today. The room erupted into argument. Some uncles defended the tradition fiercely. Others looked uncertain, glancing at their own sons with new eyes. I used the distraction to walk calmly to the basement door, unlock it, and step outside. No one tried to stop me. My packed bag was hidden in the equipment shed, ready for this moment. I shouldered it and walked away from the farm without looking back. 1 year later, I sat in a coffee shop 2 states away, nursing a lat while checking my encrypted email. College classes were going well. My part-time job covered rent for my tiny apartment. I was surviving. A new message appeared from Oliver's secure account. Things are changing. Slowly, but they're changing. No fights for 6 months now. Great-grandfather still tries, but the mothers won't allow it. 3 families moved away completely. The younger boys are allowed to be boys again. Your father sends money when he can. He misses you. I stared at the screen, emotions warring within me. Part of me wanted to delete the message and cut all ties. Another part desperately wanted to believe change was possible. A second message arrived, this one from Tobias, sent through Oliver. I turned 10 last week. No fighting. Mom says never again. Thank you. I closed my laptop and looked out the window at the busy street. People passed by, unaware of the battles fought in hidden basements, the scars carried beneath clothes, the hunger used as control. I thought about the evidence cache, still hidden in that abandoned silo. A nuclear option I hadn't needed to use yet. My phone buzzed with a text from my roommate, asking if I wanted anything from the grocery store. Such a normal question. Such a luxury to worry about ordinary things. I typed back, yes, everything. Then I opened my laptop again and began writing. Not evidence this time, but a story, our story. The truth about tradition and control, about resistance and survival. About how family can be both prison and salvation. I titled it simply, The Blood of Brotherhood. Maybe someday, I'd be brave enough to publish it. Maybe someday, I'd even go home again, not to that house, but to help the cousins who remained, to build something new from the wreckage of tradition. For now, though, I was free, and somewhere back home, young boys were growing up without learning how to make each other bleed. That was enough. That was everything.